Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. More bolt action videos here for you guys, and today we're taking a look at the next scenario in Market Garden here. It's been a minute since we've had a video. We're going to try and up the schedule here a little bit on these. It's just lots of things going on for multiple different games, but also real life things. So just can't always get to as much video content as we would like. Otherwise, we'd certainly be done with the book by now. But Scenario 13 is another fun one in what is already just a fun campaign book. Anyway, there's always something good to find in all of these campaign books for really any of the games that Warlord produces, but specifically here, Bolt Action. So, and there's obviously a lot of campaign books to really expand upon just the core basic game. So this one is called The Road from Rencum, 20th of September, Scenario 13 again. So we're just going to read through parts of it here for you guys and then kind of add some thoughts on how to play it, good points, bad points, and maybe some variations. So the Arnhem landings caused a flurry of activity, not of panic, in the German command structure in the Arnhem region. All sorts of forces were put together and thrown into action in an effort to push the British back onto their LZs. One of these was a force of half-trained Luftwaffe personnel with 8 aging French Char B tanks. And again, Char B is a fun one, especially just for sheer size of the damn thing, which had been surrendered to the Germans in 1940 and committed against elements of the border regiment on the western aspect of the British divisional area. So what are we really talking about for the scenario? So most of the scenarios we've done so far have been really smaller affairs than your typical bolt action game, and some interesting just ideas and focuses or objectives or goals to accomplish in the mission. But here we're bumping up to a force of 1,000 points, so pretty solid game. The British force is drawn from the air landing infantry list and must include at least 2 6-pounder guns. German force is drawn from the German old men and boys list, but must include at least 2. I'm not sure if that O was just randomly a typo there. Maybe they were trying to spell TWO, and who knows. But anyway, from Panzer Company 224. To reflect the poor standard of command and control, the Germans can only field second lieutenants, apart from the commander, who can't be ranked higher than the captain. Makes sense. And that's just a fun one to try too, if you're trying some variants of these campaign scenarios, or just something different, right? Try one of the the sort of not super competitive lists or something like that, and just try to limit yourself to otherwise maybe a couple of suboptimal choices here and there, just to create some interesting challenges. And again, there's so many layers of variations we can do to keep the game fresh. All right, set up on this one, the border regiment troops are dug in along the edge of the wood, 12 inches deep, stretching along one long edge of the table and facing open ground with another line of woods on the other side. So pretty typical here of a lot of the scenarios. 2 narrow lanes cross the table from one wood to the other with no just no cover whatsoever between the woods. So always a little scary to have fully open terrain. But speaking of that Char B, right, just to show you guys again, sheer size, it is a pretty chonky tank relative to pretty much, well, most things out there. Probably not quite the size of a mouse maybe, but the thing was huge. So we'll have to actually see if we can get a comparison shot as far as models go for the game. I'm not sure on the exact real life dimensions of the two, but that would be a fun comparison, certainly. Obviously, the mouse would have eaten it for breakfast as far as just firepower goes, but obviously the mouse was never operational either. Anywho, deployment. All of the British troops are in trenches at the front edge of the woods, but the enemy knows where they are, so the British do not get hidden. Germans must destabilize for objectives. The Germans must destabilize the British position by getting a force into the rear of the border regiment and thereby threatening the divisional area. Naturally, they don't want that. The British have to stop them from doing that. So, get an interesting little top secret bit there. We're going to skip that for just a moment to show you guys the deployment area. So you have the Allies there, you got roads running, but again, this is an open ground mission here, so going to be pretty brutal and bloody if anybody decides to peek out into the open, and the Germans have to cross that, so it's going to be rough. But thankfully the Brits just have a couple of 6-pounders and nothing heavier. So the first turn, the Germans enter the table with an advance move and can have up to half their infantry in reserve. but must deploy their tanks in the first turn. No outflanking moves can be attempted, and the normal rules for reinforcements apply. 1/3 of the British units must start the game in ambush, though. The game duration, 6 turns, so standard turns here. Stamina of the German force is pretty limited, and if they haven't made progress after 6 turns, they give up and basically retire. So how do we achieve victory then? The Germans have to get at least 1 tank off the table on the British side to gain a victory. Losses are not a consideration, whereas getting even 1 tank into the British divisional area is. So it's an all-out rush to basically push across the table. Now, of course, the British 6-pounders are going to be plinking away, so really first focus is going to be for the Germans to deal with those somehow, at least put some pin tokens on them, hopefully get them to not fire until the Germans get closer, and then just start whittling away on the guns and the crew. So again, just to reiterate here, British are going to have at least 2 6-pounder AT guns in that 1,000 points. Probably will have more, but again, that is going to be their main way of dealing with the Shars, outside of maybe some other odd tricks that they can pull. Germans, again, have to have at least 2 tanks, but really those 6-pounders, depending on how many the British field, and depending on, I can't remember the cost of the Shars off the top of my head right now, but it's going to be imperative to have probably maybe at least 3 or something like that, if it's feasible, to field those. We'll review the Panzer Company list here separately at some point, but it's going to be rough. So Germans, again, need to neutralize as many of those guns as fast as possible, but also still make steady progress up across the board, and hopefully just not get bogged down by pin tokens, because, again, there is no cover in the middle, so once the Germans have committed to crossing or advancing, they're just going to have to keep pushing and hopefully not suffer. So that being said, again, the Shars are huge, so taking some cover behind them and trying to limit the angles of shots that the British can take on the infantry will be key. So now this fun little top secret bit here. So let's see here, Colonel Frost's force, and so we're just skipping ahead here. So radio signals from the bridge, out of ammunition, God save the king. So fun stuff. I love, you can find stuff like this, which is cool too. It really just adds flavor in all these campaign books. So again, across all multiple games, but certainly in all the bolt action campaign books and other supplements. So there's just lots of great ways that, great little historical tidbits here for your history nut. Of course, you'll love this kind of stuff. And you're playing this game, so you probably are a history nut. So fun little stuff like this that just, again, really fleshes out those epic historical moments here. So, but a fun scenario, interesting ways that we could play this. Certainly, again, the gist of it is, of course, somebody's got to cross and get off the board here, so we can try this again in different theaters. You could try this in other areas of the Western Front and just play around with the forces available. You could do something like this. I'm sure there's probably a similar type of mission in like the Berlin book and other Eastern Front things. But again, you can play with a lot of this stuff. You could try this scenario at night, which would make that really interesting and add some different wrinkles. You could try it as, something more like winter. So maybe like a Bastogne type of situation. So there's just lots of little wrinkles you could try and just test out to, again, just play with the scenario. And it doesn't also have to be these two forces, right? So there's, again, so many fun things to try, and that's what can keep the game fresh. But let us know your thoughts if you've run this scenario. Again, so this is scenario 13 for bolt action, and how that has gone for you, any changes that you've made in your games, or did you just run it stock as described here? Looking forward to hearing from you guys. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.